Well, the start of my speech says, thanks Rob and Lucy for your lovely speeches. I might just change that to thanks Rob. Hadn't quite expected to be roasted as hard as I have been. Is this the best place to stand? Step forward, thanks. It's like the dancing later, I need a bit of assistance. But yeah, and also thanks Rob. Good man. But yeah, also a big thank you to all of you for coming. It really does mean a huge amount to Lucy and I that you've all come here to celebrate with us. We love all of you a huge amount, so it does really mean a lot that you're here. Before I talk about my wonderful wife, I'd like to thank Rob and Helen, who've enabled this whole event. A lot has gone into making today happen, and with Lucy and I being up in Newcastle most of the year, you guys have been massive. I'm not going to turn around. You guys have been massive helps just to get things to this point. Since we first met, I've been so welcomed into your family, and it's just been lovely to get to know you guys, and also Emily and Dom, and to join in all your wonderful family holidays. It's really clear to see where Lucy gets her silliness, her kindness, her self-discipline, and her creativity, and possibly even her roasting. I'm very grateful to have you guys as my new parents-in-law. There seems no better way to become a member of your family than for at least today take on the name Groom. Pity clap is much appreciated. To my own parents, I think it's so easy to take for granted what you have right in front of you. And I've been so blessed to have parents who still love each other and are still married after even 30 years. So much of the man I am today has come from you both, as well as the experiences and the opportunities you've enabled me to have. I know you both are excited as I am to have Lucy joining our family, and ever since we first met her and you guys met her, you directed her so much love, and I've really appreciated that. To Glyn, Elaine, Paul, Alison, Nikki, Richard, Karen, Annie, Fab, Rick and Rach, our lovely godparents. Over the years you guys have been so incredibly generous to us. The prayers, the messages, the visits, the Christmas presents, the birthday presents, the haircuts, the love life questions, the stories and the care you've showed have just all gone so above and beyond. And for that I really want to say a really heartfelt thank you. And then also a massive thank you to all my ushers. It's meant a lot. You guys have been so willing to help today, enabling I and Lucy to just enjoy the wedding. I want to say a particular thank you to my best man Eugene. He's helped plan a really enjoyable and chilled stag do. He was there when I went ring shopping, and he's just been a really caring and loyal friend to both Lucy and I. And then finally I want to thank all those of you who I know have been helping out behind the scenes. There's been a huge host of helpers. So many of you have showed us incredible generosity, both in terms of helping for today and also in other ways, and for that we're really grateful. But if I was to name you all, probably wouldn't have any time to say anything about Lucy. So if you weren't aware already, tonight there's a pretty big football match happening. And in most sports the term big game player is given to someone who can be relied upon to deliver and to succeed at the defining and pivotal moments. In football it's someone who can perform at their best without being swayed by the big occasion. Big times are defined by big moments, and it's big moments where you want your big game players to show up. A relationship in many ways is the same. It's also got pretty big moments. I remember when I first met Lucy quite well. It was a weekend trip up to Scotland with the Christian Union, and Lucy had only just joined Newcastle University. There was an evening quiz going on and I wanted to join one of the teams. I spotted a girl on a table nearby who seemed to be having a fun conversation with the people around her. She held herself confidently, and by the way she was chatting, it seemed like someone very interesting to me. So of course I decided to join her team, and after the quiz and now having got to know her a little bit, I remember very clearly thinking to myself that whoever would go on to marry this girl was going to be an incredibly lucky guy. At the time, I certainly didn't expect that person to actually be me. Rolling on to the end of the academic year, and I hadn't seen that much more of Lucy. She was going to a different church to me, and it was quite busy. I was quite busy with volleyball. The next time we met was when Lucy came along to a mini conference called Foundations. I made a few attempts to chat with her again, and whether it was nerves or poor timing, I didn't seem to manage it. On the last evening, in a brave final attempt to make contact, I organised a spontaneous frisbee game between the people who were there. My plan couldn't have backfired more when Lucy decided just to head home and not take part. Three others were a bit too keen, and as the organiser I felt obligated to play this frisbee match in the rain. What a disaster. At the start of the next year, it was a very pleasant surprise to discover Lucy had changed churches and was now going to mine. Finally, I managed to chat to her again, and when we'd both been asked to count the money given in at the student supper. I got a sense she might be interested in me when after 3 weeks she'd still giggle at my lame jokes. At this point, she'd even started a couple conversations with me. Knowing it would be totally uncool to ask Lucy out via text message, but also being my mother's son and that you should go in with a plan, I sent Lucy a message over Facebook, which, as you've heard, she's just read out. In my version, it went something like this. It's totally uncool to ask you out over text, so on Sunday I'm going to ask you in person. Please make yourself available. Without such a well-planned approach, we surely wouldn't have reached this stage today. On the date, I attempted to demonstrate my interest in culture and my economic stability to Lucy by taking her out to a modern art gallery and then to an Italian restaurant. The two exhibits were unanticipated, with one being How the West Must Die, with guns and American flags being painted on fire, and the second was a collection of batiks painted with reproductive organs. At the Italian restaurant, I whipped out my 2-for-1 Pizza Express voucher to pay. Somehow, we still managed the second date to play crazy golf, and Lucy beat me comfortably. After a few more dates, including one eating Cheerios and carrot sticks while watching the Fellowship of the Ring on uncomfortable fold-up chairs in the university library, I began to realise that Lucy was becoming someone very special to me. And to go back to my sports metaphor from earlier, I realised she was a big game player. When I served Lucy uncooked pasta, she invited me for roast camembert and chocolate pots. When I jumped into a ball cage at a volleyball practice and needed to go to hospital, Lucy cycled over with a Tupperware of snacks and stayed with me long into the night to check I was okay. When I got quite feverish COVID symptoms, Lucy came over to check on me, brought me medication, tucked me into bed, and then returned in the morning to check on me again and make some porridge. Time and time again, Lucy has over-delivered on love and care. Perhaps the most notable moment for our early dating was when I took quite a big risk in playing a prank on Lucy. My first year accommodation had played some pretty great pranks after our exams, and I knew that for a good prank you had to either go big or go home. But it's important to know that this was still fairly on in our relationship, and I had no idea how Lucy would react. If she took it really badly, possibly that could be it for us. The prank was simple: to remove every single item in Lucy's room, including her bed, her wardrobe, her desk, etc. And with the help of her housemates, we were very successful. What I didn't anticipate was that Lucy was coming back later than planned, and she was also saying she was very tired. When Lucy got back, I was very nervous how she might respond to what we'd done. And although she first appeared shocked and tried to tell us off, I could see quite quickly that somehow she'd really enjoyed that I pulled this prank on her. And there was a deadly twinkle in her eye which said that revenge would be coming when I was least expecting it. Least expecting it happened to be at 5 a.m, having just travelled the full length of the country from Bournemouth to Newcastle, feeling totally shattered from a beach volleyball tournament, and with burned skin, wanting nothing more than to just hit my pillow and fall asleep. It was at this moment I discovered that Lucy had cling film wrapped every single item in my room, and I couldn't get into my bed. I couldn't open the wardrobe, and every individual item on the desk had been completely cling filmed. Where Lucy is adventurous, I am significantly less so. At Lucy's family holiday in the Isle of Wight, I found myself quite a bit out of my depth. My parents raised me and my sister Anna with no musical skills to our name. So, when the musical talents of the younger cousins were being put on show, followed by the musical talents of the older cousins, I began to see a worrying trend occurring. In no time at all, I was being called on to demonstrate my lack of any skills. And feeling obligated to join in, I sang the only song I actually knew all the words to, the Ugandan national anthem. I think next to that, our honeymoon visiting the Amazon feels much less daring. When last summer I realised I wanted to propose, I had an urge to do it as soon as possible. It was all triggered by Lucy's bridesmaid Catherine messaging me to say that Lucy didn't want me to know, but they'd had a look at some rings and that she had all the sizes and designs Lucy liked, if I ever needed them. When Lucy left Newcastle to volunteer on a summer camp for 2 weeks, I knew I had an opportunity to spring into action. The Grooms had planned a holiday in Cornwall, which I was invited to at the end of those 2 weeks, and it seemed like the perfect place to propose. A very excited phone call with Catherine in Northern Ireland led to a planned trip to the jeweller as soon as her flight landed in Newcastle. I caught up with Eugene in the morning, and we all traipsed in together to choose a ring for Lucy. Using Catherine's information as a guide on what to choose, I picked out a ring with a design I liked, and it was set to arrive the day before we left for Cornwall. If it didn't arrive in time, I'd simply propose when we got back to Newcastle. But I also wanted to chat with Rob and Helen before proposing. I texted Helen to ask if there was any opportunity to meet before we went down for the holiday, but timing-wise, it better to do it while we were there. Thankfully, the ring arrived as planned, and I collected it and took it on a train down to meet Dom and Emily, who were giving me a lift the rest of the way. After some crazy golf, I opened up to Dom about my plan for proposing, and of course the secret quickly spread to Emily as well. The holiday was 1 week long, and I knew that unless I proposed early on it, the week would just hang over the entire trip for me, and I couldn't properly enjoy it. But with Lucy in the same house as Rob and Helen, it felt quite difficult to properly catch them. The moment came on the second morning at breakfast when Lucy went for a shower. Helen was free, and I asked if we could chat. She quickly went to grab Rob, who was phoning Nigel, who was there but is now here. And Helen said to Rob, "Ben wants to talk to us, Rob." And I remember Rob saying, "Now isn't a good time, I'm phoning Nigel." to which Helen replied, a bit more firmly, "Rob, Ben wants to talk to us." Rob got the hint, and we had a quick chat outside. I mentioned to them how I was in love with Lucy, and I wanted to ask her to marry me, and what were their thoughts on that. Thankfully, they seemed to think it was also a pretty good idea, so the plan was on. It was only later I found out that while we had been chatting, Dom had been guarding the stairs in case Lucy came down from her shower to intercept her and give me as much time as he possibly could. So now, armed with a ring and parents keen for me to propose to their daughter, I started plotting how I could actually do the deed. I knew Lucy wanted any proposal to come as a bit of a surprise, and the best way to do that would be to throw her off the scent of it. The afternoon when we were walking down the beach, I started saying to Lucy, "Let's say I were to start thinking about proposing. Is there anything I should know ahead of time?" To this, Lucy said, "Well, she'd like to be proposed to with a ring, and I should know her size," which I think was like an F or a G. So I replied, "Oh, a letter system. That's interesting. I would have thought it'd be a number system, from like the diameter of your finger." Little did she know I had that exact size F or G ring in my bag already with me. We got back in the evening, and Lucy and I found ourselves alone in the living room where my bag was. It was now or never. Either I would propose now, or I might never get the courage to do it. So I told Lucy I'd bought her a present in Newcastle, and would she like it now or later. Of course, Lucy wanted the present now, and I told her to close her eyes. When I told her to open them, she found me in front of her, on one knee, a ring box in my hand, and a ring inside that ring box. As her eyes opened, I said, "Will you marry me?" And now at this point, everything was going to plan, and the next thing I didn't anticipate, which was Lucy bursting into tears and asking me, "Are you serious?" Seeing her in tears, I immediately got up to hug her, and I had to whisper in her ear, "Is that a yes?" From that moment, it's been a bit of a roller coaster trying to organise this wedding, trying to find a house we've moved into, and organising the honeymoon. There's nobody else I would rather have this experience together with, and it's felt like every obstacle we faced has brought us closer together and showed us how we complement each other with our approaches to problems. Even yesterday, I was struck by how Lucy's design concept came to life at both the church and also here at the venue. Normally these things are totally lost on me, but this whole place really does look magical. It makes me so proud that I can say it's my wife who's been behind that. As we look to the future, I'm excited by the prospect of what living together for the first time will look like, which directions we move in as a couple rather than just as individuals. The number one tip I've heard this past year has been about communication, and the promises we made to each other at the church are promises I take seriously. For better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part, according to God's holy law. Lucy, I love you so much, and I can't wait to spend the rest of our lives together. if you'd all please be upstanding, I'd like to raise a glass to my wife, Lucy Wooding.